Okay, Kathy Stein, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kathy Meany. Greetings, everyone. I'm Kathleen Stein. I'm the president of the St. Lawrence County Mall Unit, and Beth Radow, the LWV New York State Issue Specialist for Agriculture, Energy, and the Environment. And I are here to give you some background and answer any questions you might have about our proposal that the League of Women Voters of New York State adopt a climate emergency resolution. This proposal has the backing of the 5 leagues of the Nassau County ILO, as well as the Suffolk and Westchester County leagues and the St. Lawrence County Mall Unit. Okay, a little more background. Hopefully, we don't have to convince anyone here of the reality and alarming acceleration of climate change caused by human activity, in particular, the burning of fossil fuels. Leaders around the world have recognized the increasingly dire situation. As noted in the resolution document, which I hope everybody had a chance to look at, President Biden and New York Governor Cuomo have both called for immediate and decisive action to slow climate change. This resolution would be in line with the League of Women Voters US position, as demonstrated by 2 recently issued statements in support of federal level actions to counter climate change and promote environmental justice for those most impacted by it. In September, in the September 22, 2020 memo of support for the Children's Fundamental Rights and Climate Recovery Resolution, which was introduced in both houses of Congress on September 23, 2020, US League CEO Virginia Case writes, "This resolution demands that our nation develop a national, just, comprehensive, and science-based climate recovery plan. For decades, the League has supported the stewardship and conservation of lands and natural resources. But younger generations are calling on us to go further, to repair the harm done by human-caused climate change and protect their freedoms and future. The LWV stands ready to follow the leadership of young people in demanding a just climate recovery plan that prioritizes those most impacted, including Indigenous peoples, communities of color, and working class families caught in economic transition." In a letter of support of President Biden's executive orders on climate change issued on January 27, 2021, LWV US President Dr. Deborah Ann Turner pointed out that since the late 2000s, the League has fervently advocated for a coordinated government response to global climate change. More recently, the League has expanded our work to focus on climate justice. That's a quote from Dr. Turner. Climate emergency declarations are a tool to encourage local, national, and supranational governmental action against the causes and effects of climate change. They have been promoted in the US by an organization called the Climate Mobilization, which was founded at the People's Climate March of 2014 by a group of activists who felt that no existing climate group was calling for a response to climate change at the scale they felt was needed. A resolution template can be found on the Climate Mobilization Project website. In it, it's very extensive, and it will really, if you take a look at it, it's like 7 or 8 pages long. It will give you an idea of really the range of things that can be covered in these declarations. In the template, the authors state that quote, "Restoring a safe and stable climate requires an emergency mobilization on a scale not seen since World War II. The massive scope and scale of action necessary to stabilize the climate and biosphere will require an unprecedented level of public awareness, engagement, and deliberation to develop and implement effective, just, and equitable policies." We think that the League of New York State should join this campaign because raising public awareness of and engagement with major public policy issues is what we do as an organization. The League also excels at giving people the tools to participate in and influence legislative decision-making. The scope for advocacy and education around these declarations is far-reaching. And I would like to see if I can share my screen here and just read again. Hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. but to read the text of our proposed resolution. Whereas an environmental condition adversely affecting Earth and its inhabitants, once referred to as climate change, has advanced to become a climate emergency, including ocean acidification, damage to marine ecosystems and food sources, and a rise in sea levels resulting in flooding and the displacement of coastal businesses and residences. Extreme weather events, including extremes of temperatures, as well as increasingly devastating storms and wildfires, causing severe harm to America's agriculture, forestry, and tourism industries. Adverse impacts on human health, as well as the introduction of new vectors for infectious disease. And whereas the world's leading climate scientists predict that the climate crisis will catastrophically intensify if prompt public action is not taken through public policy and legislation to curb emissions and remove atmospheric CO2 through natural and technological sequestration. And whereas the climate crisis disproportionately afflicts the most vulnerable among us, members of indigenous nations, people of color, rural and coastal communities, and low-income households in general, all of whom have fewer resources to cope with the common consequences of climate change, such as property damage, displacement, job loss, and health problems. And whereas the prompt and robust mobilization of civil society acting in concert with all levels of government to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions is necessary to avert or even to mitigate the progressive and increasingly catastrophic deterioration of Earth's environment, therefore, be it resolved. We, as delegates of New York State League of Women Voters, local leagues assembled at the 2021 LWVNYS convention, call upon the New York State League Board and local leagues to urge state and local governments to adopt and publicize declarations of climate emergency appropriate to local conditions and take appropriate action to implement the declarations of climate emergency. As of May 24th, 2021, 50 countries, including all 27 members of the European Union, have issued climate emergency declarations. In the US, there have been over 151 declarations, including recently the state of Hawaii. Now, Beth is going to talk about the other state leagues that have passed similar resolutions and how we in the League of New York State and our members can use this resolution for advocacy at micro as well as macro levels. And let me stop my share here. Whoop. There we go.
Thank you, Kathy, and good morning, everyone. My name is Beth Radow, and I want to fill you in on how the use of the term climate emergency is creating a unifying message to prompt attention and action, and to tell you about what's happening in DC and New York with the climate emergency. But first, I want to mention that as of 2019, 7 other state leagues have adopted a resolution declaring a climate emergency using league positions Kathy referred to. Those states are Alaska, California, Colorado, Florida, Illinois, Massachusetts, and Oregon. As Kathy mentioned, this action is consistent with the National League's acknowledgement of making climate change a priority, requiring swift attention. It follows that New York State League and local chapters should follow through on this initiative to take action in our communities and at the state level. Think of climate emergency declaration as infrastructure for making substantive changes to mitigate and otherwise adapt to the effects of a warming climate. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer publicly stated shortly after Joe Biden's inauguration that the president should declare climate change a national emergency, unlocking over 100 additional presidential powers to tackle the overheating planet. Senator Schumer said, if there ever was an emergency, the climate crisis is one. In December, more than 380 environmental groups sent a letter to Joe Biden's transition team, urging him to issue an executive order invoking the National Emergencies Act. So footnote here, The National Emergencies Act, or NEA, was enacted in September of 1976 and signed into law by President Gerald Ford, formalizing the emergency powers of the president. The act empowers the president to activate special powers during a crisis, but it also imposes certain procedural formalities, and Congress also has the authority to be a check on the abuse of this power. So at the same time that Senator Schumer made this connection publicly, Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, encouraged every country in the world to adopt emergency resolutions until carbon dioxide is no longer building up in the atmosphere. Although Joe Biden has frequently spoken about the quote, climate emergency, unquote, and referred to it that way on the White House priorities list, he has stopped short of issuing a formal declaration. And as Kathy mentioned, the US wouldn't be the first country to declare a climate emergency, far from it. Considering the formidable role we play through our carbon-heavy industries and personal activities of daily living, we as Americans have a responsibility, I believe, and an opportunity to do our part to address this emergency. Further, a bicameral effort was introduced in the United States Congress in 2019, seeking a concurrent congressional resolution to declare a national climate emergency. In New York State, Governor Cuomo signed into law the New York State 2019 Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, requiring 100% climate neutrality by 2050. This includes electricity and fuels, among other things. And it has incremental benchmarks. Achieving these benchmarks takes funding. Declaring climate change the emergency that it is opens the potential for states and local governments to access funds designated for emergencies. On June 26, the New York City Council, as Kathy mentioned, adopted, June 26, 2019, I might add, adopted a resolution declaring a climate emergency and calling for immediate emergency mobilization to restore a safe climate. Consider the policy possibilities in a city the size of New York City when lawmakers tell it like it is where climate change is concerned. As Kathy also mentioned, the city of New Rochelle, which is the next town over from Mamaroneck, where I live, unanimously adopted a climate emergency declaration in May of 2021. The effect of this resolution makes the New York City manager responsible to focus on the making of cities emergency use compliant with goals outlined in New York State's Climate Act, incorporate climate resilient policies, attend to the disproportionate effects of climate change on marginalized neighborhoods, suggest mitigation strategies, and in short, recognize climate change for what it is, an emergency, and act accordingly to coordinate the actions and reactions of various relevant city departments, including emergency response. Where do people like us come in? The resolution involves establishing an advisory committee, and that's people like us. I read through the New Rochelle resolution and it inspired me to propose to the nearly decade-old Town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative, of which I am a member, to propose that we approach our town council to adopt a resolution to declare a climate emergency in our town. In Mamaroneck, we sit on the Long Island Sound and have the impacts of extreme weather, such as from Hurricane Sandy and flooding, to prove our vulnerability. And as a committed collection of citizen volunteers, our sustainability collaborative has earned a track record working with our local elected officials. I had an aha moment realizing that we are already doing the work. So formalizing designation as a climate emergency advisory committee could present a new role, could promote communication, action, accountability, and sustained outcomes. So why declare a climate emergency in your village and town after we pass this resolution, regardless of what we do here? Once we do it here, how do you bring it home to your community? This action will properly characterize for any community who adopts its impacts of climate change on infrastructure, safety, property value, and so on. It will emphasize for your residents and voters that the town, recognizing the local threats to property value and resident health from extreme weather, from flooding, from heat, from air pollution and particulates, is organizing itself to take specific action to protect the residents, their property, and the community's quality of life. The climate emergency declaration would also confirm you have the interdepartmental, intermunicipal coordination taking steps to mitigate climate change in your town, prepare for extreme weather impacts, potentially pave the way to access emergency funding to restore and maintain your infrastructure, develop clean energy, compliance with county and state mandates, including a shift to renewables, invoke equitable standards in your community, formally track how your elected representatives are incorporating into local practice the mandates of federal, state, county, and local law. So if you have a local environmental committee or a sustainable committee consisting of citizen volunteers who act in an advisory capacity, adoption by your town board could expand the scope of that committee's role to include the implementation of policies and procedures consistent with improving the resilience, sustainability, and quality of life for the town in the context of the mandate expressed in the climate emergency declaration adopted by the board in your town. All the better if you sit on a committee with an established track record of interacting with elected officials. But if no such committee yet exists, this mobilization initiative presents a reason to form such a committee, since the climate emergency declaration would benefit from the presence of an advisory committee to bring the declaration into action. And if you decide to advocate for adoption of such a resolution in your town, consider inviting local high school students, local college students, and young adults who have an interest to join you at the board meeting when you present it. As we all know, the next century belongs to our next generation. And we work together, we can demonstrate to them that we have their back. Let me close by thanking you for taking the time to be here today, unifying around the characterization of climate change as the emergency that it is can serve as our North Star. To delegates, please vote for this resolution. To all here, please consider proposing to your local and county board to adopt a resolution declaring a climate emergency. Together, as we do as the League, we can make a difference. If anybody has any questions, wants to make any comments, I think we're complete with our presentation, unless Kathy, there was anything that you wanted to add.
No, I think you really, helped bring it down to the kinds of things we could do, and the idea that the advisory committee or council, I think, and I mean, just speaking from the town I live in and the neighboring town, we already have, we have a sustainability committee here in Canton where I live, and the town of Potsdam is a climate smart community, which has a task force that has representatives from local government and other stakeholders. But they're not doing that much, and I think that urging the passage of and achieving the passage of this kind of resolution would really help energize them and give them more of an oversight role and empower to sort of ask when building permits are being given for new housing, low-income housing or whatever. Okay, let's just make sure that this is going to be green construction here. Let's going to make sure that can we put solar panels on this? I mean, this town of Canton has an admirable solar initiative going on, but this would help maybe expand it, maybe unlock some more funding to help people pay for getting solar panels who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. So, I really, the idea of infrastructure as Beth said, you know, that it's a tool. This can take, you know, you can take baby steps with this, or you can try to take big steps with this. I think it really and it will raise it in people's awareness, you know, our members' awareness, and then, you know, we're all part of our community. So that's.
One thing I would add is also, as the issue specialist at the state, I do get correspondence from people in different communities around the state who at times ask whether we can sign on to a letter and so forth. And when we don't have, haven't done formalized studies, or if we don't have a specific position, we can't always necessarily jump on it right away and say, okay. But a resolution like this, which is quite succinct, calling climate emergency, can empower members of our local leagues to be able to take action locally, and join, you know, with local committees if you have environmental committees, and reach out. And so I think that this could have the effect of empowering local leagues in a way that hasn't existed previously. So, you know, that is another benefit here.
Kay,
Hey,
Wagner has a question?
Actually, if I can go to Amy first. Amy's
Oh,
had
sure.
a question posted first.
Okay.
So let's do Amy first. Amy, if you want to unmute and ask your question, that would be great. And then Kay will come to you.
Hi, this is Amy Allo from the LWV Albany. And my question directly to Kathy, but of course is to Beth, is would there be any impact on the LWVNYS board by passing this resolution in terms of additional work that would be created? Or is it a statement of purpose, intent, and benign, not only in its intent, but in its impact? Personally, I support it. Our local league has been active in working with similar kinds of governmental agencies this past year, member of a coalition called Zero Waste Capital District. And I think that the idea of this gives, as Beth has so, I think maybe not knowing my question was there, has already responded to, I think it gives authority for local leagues to carry on and to take on what they can do. So I think it's excellent.
Yes, this really shouldn't cause any additional work for this. Oh, getting some feedback from somebody. Oh, it's from me. I don't know why this is happening. It should not cause any more work. Bless you for thinking, though, of our often overstretched state board. But no, it really should not, you know, cause them any additional work. But it should just raise awareness and ask them to you know, take this into consideration in other positions and work that we're already doing. That's the way I look at it.
I think I might add to that, in some respects, it might, not so much for the board, but I think that it might streamline some of the communication that I receive, Amy, and it's very nice to see you, Amy. You know, leagues around the state are doing very good work. And, you know, I think that we think so much about what's in a word, what's in a phrase. Messaging is so important right now. And this phrase captures so succinctly a message that we need to communicate, and it will unify a voice. And we all know that change happens, you know, one person at a time, but the ripple effects, the cumulative impacts of all of us speaking in a language that we communicate, you know, through these words, will have an impact moving upstream. And as I mentioned, we already have this law from 2019 to get us to carbon neutrality, if you will. And there is a push to do this at the federal level as well. So, just to echo what Kathy said, I don't see this as adding to the work of the State League Board. I see it as hopefully inspiration as we join the other 7 sister leagues in encouraging other state leagues to do it so that we could actually do this across the country. The state of Hawaii, by the way, I don't know, Kathy, if you mentioned this, the state of Hawaii declared a climate emergency. So there you have it.
Great.
The one thing
Thank
I
you.
also would just,
We actually see a number of questions here. So if I can go along the line here, Kay Wagner, you're up next.
Hi, yeah, Kay Wagner from the Tompkins County League. So I have a comment and a question. First, the comment is just, I think, I know I find myself testifying for local planning boards and the county legislature and the city council and so on, and almost always doing it as a resident. And I think this will enable me to more quickly get board approval to be able to do it on behalf of the league, which will be good for the league because it shows the league's presence, as well as giving the statement more clout rather than just being somebody who may not even live in the city boundaries or something. So that's just a comment where I think this will be very useful. The question has to do with what are the kinds of funding that if our localities were to put in place this kind of a resolution, what are some of the fundings that we might be able to get that we can't already? I mean, locally, we do have a Heat Smart group that's already working a lot with NYSERDA to fund fundings for heat pumps and things like that. But I'm just wondering what kinds of fundings that this might adore to.
Kay, that is the question. And I think what we're doing is we're building the airplane as we're flying it. So if you think about this, National Emergency Act, right? There's the potential, and again, there's the potential at the federal level, and then I assume that states would have to apply for federal funding. And so, we can come up with categories in our own mind, but I think that part of the answer is, what do we determine as communities that we need the funding for? So for example, if Governor Cuomo has, passed into law something about fossil fuel, how we shift to renewable energy, how people are trying to get solar on their homes, you can imagine the different possibilities of what we would do. But again, I think that this is very much something in process. And when I refer to infrastructure, I think what we're trying to do is create those connections from laws that already exist. And then we fill in the blanks with the substance as we determine where the needs are. And I'm sure that there are other people that have more, can have different responses to that, but that's really what I'm able to offer right now.
Very good. Thank you for that. Ann Erling, you're up next. Please unmute.
Hi, thank you for this this terrific resolution. I'm excited about the possibility of the league voting this in. I would echo everybody's statements about this helping us with our local advocacy, and I would say that it especially would be helpful for places where there isn't already a strong coalition of people attentive to the climate crisis. We in Albany, as Amy mentioned, we've got many of us that are focused on this, and we're already a climate smart community and get funds through that. But there are many areas of the state that haven't signed on to that. So with this kind of a resolution in hand, individuals, league members can go and try to get their communities connected to those programs, which are a source of funding. But the local Albany delegates had been discussing this last night and wondered whether we could add some content to this resolution. And through the back and forth, we understand it can't be added to the resolution, but can be added as a direction to the board, which we're going to propose today. One of the things to be added would reference species extinctions. As I said, I think this is a tremendous, really, really well-written resolution, but species extinctions and the threat to biodiversity is a significant impact of the climate crisis, which, affects our food and water security. Loads and loads of species have already been affects our ability to get medicine, all sorts of things. So we were interested in adding that to the end of the first whereas statement. And then also to just add a phrase at the end of the last whereas, which would reference the massive societal disruption that all of this will cause. And we've got that already happening with people leaving their communities because they can no longer grow their crops there. A lot of the migration to the United States is from people coming from a very arid corridor where climate change has made living there no longer possible. So anyway, I don't quite know how to.
Oh, we're
Hey,
losing you.
okay, Anne. Okay, Anne, you're fading in and out. I see you're on the road. All right, Anne, we've actually lost you. Okay, Kathy Stein, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that would be, a fine, addition. And certainly, yeah, the mass migration of people, within the country to the US. And yes, the mass extinctions and things going on, that is, I think that would be a helpful addition.
Very good. All right, let's go to the next question. Mary Croxton, you're up. If you would unmute, please.
I have a quick question. Has anybody, and you can put it in the chat, presented this to like local student councils to get, youth involvement, or go to PTAs to try and get, information about groups that are, want to look at climate emergency? You can put it in the chat if you've had any experience with that.
That's a great idea. We have a local, climate change group here that involves high school students. In fact, it was sort of started by high school and college students. And until the pandemic, they were having a vigil, on the village green every week. But definitely want to get them involved. That's a great suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, we have the Fredonia State has groups that they do stuff, but I wanted to kind of look at high school and middle school as well.
Yeah.
Mary, that brings up a thought that I had, and after we had the session the other night with Kay Wagner, we had such a great conversation that, my hope is that we can continue this conversation, that this isn't a, every 2-year conversation, but that after this presentation today, and hopefully we have this positive, vote on this resolution, that we can find ways to get together throughout the year. We have the, the email list of people. And if you want to send in information, to Laura, to Jennifer, whatever, it can be directed to me, Kathy and me, and we can figure out ways to stay in touch with one another, because this is a moment where we really can benefit from all working together as local leagues collaborating. I am aware of groups locally. I think this was started by youth, this whole idea of climate mobilization. So, you think of Greta Thunberg, people, young people are doing this, so we can answer that question and share the information.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'll just add one thing, and this will also address something that Jane Thomas put in the chat. Yes, we intend, first of all the workshops and sessions will be posting, information and the recording of the session, whatnot, on the league website after the convention. But Beth and I thought that we would email everybody who had registered for this workshop. And yes, we definitely will post the texts of some of the resolutions of towns. Saugerties has also passed an emergency resolution, Southampton. So, we can give people examples of things to look at too. So yes.
Excellent, very good. All right, next question, Jennifer Mead Flag, please unmute. And Marlene, you'll be next.
Hi, I have just a quick comment. I strongly support this resolution. I am chair of Newcastle's Climate Smart Communities Task Force. And I think that leagues could work with their sustainability groups or with their towns and using this resolution to help also their towns adopt the Climate Smart Community Pledge. And then they could look at all of the actions that are available under the Climate Smart Communities to mitigate issues with climate change. So that's, I think this resolution would help league members to be able to do that.
And there are funds involved with the Climate Smart Community initiative too.
Go through NYSERDA offers grants, and the Department of Environmental Conservation, which is the lead agency for the Climate Smart Communities. There are grants available sometimes as well.
Very good, thank you for that. Hey, Marlene, you're next. Marlene Colbert.
I just wanted to echo what everybody else has said, but mostly what's exciting about this is that in our community, and I live in the same community as Beth underneath her town, we're a village, and I just wanted to say that it's exciting to think that it wouldn't be only the same voices that come all the time, you know, that the town council, village board have heard from over and over, that the League of Women Voters would be a whole new voice to help push this, which would really be the most exciting part of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlene. I want to thank Marlene for the amazing work Marlene does locally. You know, the thing that's very exciting about this to me is that it's very obvious that there's a lot of great work going on around the state. And I feel energized just by hearing people here. Clearly, Jennifer, I know Jennifer is in my county, Up County, doing great work. And, you know, I see this as opportunities for us to trade information and kind of encourage one another when we have a success to be able to share that and, you know, encourage other people to replicate what we're doing, using what we're doing as models, create momentum. I'm going to have to excuse myself and get Leon to the vet. Thank you. And I will see you all soon.
Thanks,
Thank
Beth.
you, Beth.
Bye.
Hey, Kathy Stein, it's to you.
Okay, I mean, any other questions?
It actually looks like Mary Proxon.
Mary,
has another
yes.
or no, she's clapping. That's it. She's
Oh,
clapping. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? No, all quiet. Let's check the chat room one more time. There's a comment from Lisa. Climate Reality Project has started a statewide group of educators, including high school. All right,
Terrific.
good.
That's good
And
to
then,
know.
of course, New York City, the Youth Civics Initiative, that's another one where we
Yes.
collaborate with the league. Yeah.
Teresa Wildrick, I think, is raising her hand.
Okay.
Yes, just the New York Youth Civics is now, Civic Initiative is statewide now, not just for the city.
Mhm.
For what it's worth, they do a lot of good work. We haven't been able to start it here in the Hamptons, Shelter Island, North Fork yet because of pandemic, but we're looking forward to the fall.
Yes, I'd like to get in touch with them. We get our kids up here in St. Lawrence County involved in that too. But yeah, the pandemic kind of.
And the other organization that we co-sponsor with is Drawdown. It's Drawdown East End for us, but Drawdown is a bigger, I think even international organization focused on drawing down and sequestering carbon.
Great. There are all kinds of things. I mean, the state of California, I heard recently the governor says he's going to try to make the whole state a carbon sink. You know, changing agricultural practices and not only to try to make, because agriculture, as I'm sure you know, is an enormous producer of greenhouse gases, but trying to sort of not only make that zero emission, but actually turn the state into a sink, so it's absorbing carbon. And there, you know, these are practices that can be adopted and adapted all over. And so we, you know, local groups can learn more and urge, you know, if you're in, I'm in a very rural area up here, and we have, you know, a significant amount of agricultural work going on, and it would be nice to try to spread those practices. And again, the league, this would be something that the league could be seen as advocating for, and partner with other local organizations that may already be working on it. So I just, yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity, I think, for the league. And I like Marlene's comment about being a new voice. You know, sometimes you know how it is in town and village meetings when the same people show up, and and you can kind of see the little sigh, you know, here they come, they're going to say it again. But, you know, we can be a new voice.
Hey, Kathy, I don't see any further questions. Oh, here's one from Kathy O'Connor, just came into the chat room. Can the league make any statement of support for the CCIA legislation in New York State?
Oh, got some strange feedback there.
Yeah, that's actually coming from Amy. So Amy, I'm going to ask you to stay muted for the moment. We'll come to you. But let me read that again, Kathy. Can the league make any statement of support for the CCIA legislation in New York State?
Could you tell me or remind me, I may already know what the CCI legislation is, but.
Yeah, look
Just
in
remind
the
me.
chat room.
Strange. Now it seems to be me. Spectrum's playing me false up here. Oh, Climate and Communities Investment Act. Okay, yes, that's what, that's just the initials for what Beth was mentioning before. We could certainly, you know, propose that if passing this resolution, then, you know, perhaps we could ask for the state board to okay a memo of support. And it just so happens, if the slate is voted for this afternoon, will be a member of the state board, and I would certainly bring that up.
Great. I've actually asked Amy to type her question in the chat because the audio is coming from her. So it's not you, Kathy Stein.
Okay.
So we'll give Amy a moment to type her
Spectrum
question.
falsely accused. Yeah.
That's okay. That's all right. Yeah, she's been having Zoom issues. So Amy, if you want to type your question in the chat room, then I'll read it. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
She's wondering
Okay.
what action is required by this group. You know, next step. Well, next step is to be sure that if you're a delegate, you're at the plenary session this afternoon, and when the resolution will be formally proposed, and vote yes, and then, and as I said, we'll Beth and I will put together. You know, we'll email everybody who's registered here, and people can, you know, opt in or out of an email list, and we can start setting up some ways to network. And I think probably she, as the chair of the environmental committee, will be kind of the point person contact there. But we can set up, formalize a little bit more a way to contact and share information. We'll work on that.
All right, very good. Thank you. I do not see any other questions or comments.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, actually, I had my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Kay.
If I can just say quickly, the Sunrise Group is a really important youth group. We've had one of their members locally talk at one of our programs, and they did a wonderful job. And one of them is now actually the head of our local climate fund that we talked about at the other caucus. So that's a group that is really good, energetic, good speakers, put them on your radar.
Yes, absolutely. We've been trying to sort of we have a contact person up here, but I'm not sure. Again, the pandemic kind of derailed a lot of outreach.
All right, Kathy, I don't see any further questions or comments.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here and for your interest and support later, we hope.
And we appreciate all the information you shared with us, both yourself, Kathy, as well as Beth Radow. So we look forward to seeing all of you later on today. Bye, everybody.
Take care.